My name is Emma Parker. I am 28. I grew up in Ohio and moved to New York for work. I like quiet mornings, coffee, and soft music. I believed in simple things, kindness, truth, and promises. I thought my life would be ordinary and steady. Then I met James Hale. He was loud, warm, and full of big plans. He smiled like the sun. He made me laugh when I wanted to cry. I fell in love fast. I married him when I was 27. I thought that night would be the best night of my life. The night I should have slept with my new husband, I hid inside a suitcase. I tell you this first because I have to. You must feel the shock before you know why I did it. I wanted to surprise him. I wanted one last silly trick before the long life began. I packed a small scarf and a joke and enough breath to wait. I curled up inside the suitcase like a secret note. My heart was pounding. My hands were wet. I closed the zipper just enough so I could breathe and listen. I heard the door open. James's voice sounded like music in the hallway. He said my name softly. He laughed. I smiled inside the dark. I thought he would come to the bed and pick me up like when we first met. I thought he would say, "You got me," and we would fall into the mattress and start our life. Then I heard another voice. A low voice. Not a guest voice. Not a family voice. A voice that made the room change shape in my mind. "Good evening, my love," James said. He said those words like a secret song. I stayed still like a mouse. I felt the suitcase shift as feet came closer. The carpet whispered under shoes. I could hear breathing that did not belong to my love. A laugh, not mine, filled the room. The footsteps stopped right beside the suitcase. I could smell cologne, not the cologne James wore for me, but another sharp, sweet smell. I held my breath. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip the zipper open and jump out and laugh and cry all at once. Instead, I listened. The man by the bed answered with a soft sound. It was tender. Then James called him the name I had heard in whispers before, but never from James's mouth like that. He called him Michael. And then James said two words that broke something inside me. He said, "My love." The sound of those words was like glass dropping. My legs inside the suitcase went cold. The space around me narrowed until it felt like a tunnel. I pressed my hands to my face. I could not move. The man laughed, low and easy, like they shared a story. I heard them kiss. The kissing sound was small, but it was real. I tried to hold myself together. I wanted to crawl out and ask why. I wanted to cry, but tears made breathing harder. I will not tell you everything I felt in one long sentence. It was a million small things. My chest hurt. My world stopped like a hand folding a paper. My name inside my head turned foreign. I had to remind myself to breathe. Then I heard James say, "She wanted a surprise." His voice had no shame. It sounded like he was pretending to be kind. The other man laughed again. Footsteps moved to the wardrobe. The zipper of my suitcase stuck to my fingers. I wanted to scream the truth, but my mouth tasted like metal. And then the zipper of the suitcase started to move. I don't want to finish this first moment yet. I want you to sit on the edge of that sound. The zipper slid a little. The metal teeth clicked like tiny knives. I pressed my hands into the cloth and tried to make no sound at all. The outside world felt far and dangerous. I could see the light through the thin fabric, like moonlight through a curtain. A soft voice said, "She can't be serious." A deeper voice answered, "Let her." The room echoed with normal sounds, a clock ticking, the hum of the air, the rustle of sheets. My heart was a drum. That is where I stopped the first part. Imagine the zipper moving. Imagine the breathing near the suitcase. Imagine the person you love saying "my love" to someone else. Imagine the suitcase opening. What happens next? That is the cliff. That is the cut. I will come back to it. But first, you must know how we arrived here. You must know why a woman would hide in a suitcase on her wedding night. You must know what small choices made a night turn into a wound. James and I met at a coffee shop 3 years before our wedding. He spilled his latte on my notebook and offered to buy me a new one. We talked about silly things. He told me stories about his childhood in Ohio and how he loved the lake. He told me his family loved big dinners and small jokes. He was charming in a way people rarely are. He listened. We dated for 2 years. We laughed a lot. We fought a little. We made up faster than we fought. He told me once, "I don't want to make you sad." I believed him. I learned to trust the way he touched my hand. I learned to follow his lead at parties and to let him speak first. I believed he loved me in a steady way. Sometimes I saw things that made my stomach knot. He would answer messages late and then laugh about nothing. He had a driver named Michael who worked for him at the company. Michael was always at events where James was. I met Michael once at a holiday dinner when I spilled cranberry sauce on the table. He helped pass the napkins. He had kind eyes. He smiled, and I thought it was simple. James called him by his first name to show respect. I thought that was it. The red flags were small at first. A coffee cup left in the study. A sweater hung on a door that I had never seen before. My phone showed a picture of two of them at a company party, standing close. I told myself I was being silly. I told myself that love needed trust, not spying. When James proposed, he did it with a ring and a speech and a smile that made me float. He promised forever. He promised to be honest. He knelt on one knee under the stars and invited me to be his wife. My friends cried. My mother hugged me. I said yes before I checked my thoughts. I wanted to believe. The wedding plans were bright and messy. We chose peach flowers, small candles, and a hotel by the river. I told the planner I wanted the night to be perfect. He said he would arrange everything. My dress was ivory with lace. My hair had soft curls. The day felt like something from a movie. On the drive from the chapel to the hotel, James sang. He held my hand like he had when we were kids. People waved. I smiled and smiled. We were not wealthy, but we had enough. We said vows in front of family and friends. We promised to take care of each other. When it was time to go to the room, my heart felt heavy and full. We arrived at the hotel. The suite was big. The bed was soft. Candles were lit. The room smelled like jasmine and champagne. James told me to rest while he took a call. I wanted to be silly. I decided then that I would play a small prank. We had laughed about little jokes before. I thought a final joke would be the perfect end. I packed a suitcase with a scarf and a note that said, "Gotcha." I slid into the empty case. I left a tiny space for air and for my mouth to move without making noise. I told myself it was playful. I told myself he would open the case and laugh. I waited. While I waited, my mind replayed things I had seen and said I would forget. I remembered a little tug in my heart when he smiled too long at his phone. I thought of a text I once glimpsed that said, "Missing you." I told myself the human heart can stretch. I told myself to breathe. When the door opened and I heard the steps, I thought it would be the grand moment. Instead, it became a door into something else. After the first shock, after the zipper moved a little, my mind walked back through our life like a slow film. I watched small scenes, James teaching me to fish, our first apartment with mismatched chairs, the way he folded my scarf when I left it on his coat. I held on to those images like a rope. I wanted to believe in them. I wanted to believe in the man who made pancakes on rainy Sundays. But even good stories have cracks. There were secrets in the corners. James had become distant in strange ways. Sometimes his hand would brush my shoulder and then move away. Sometimes his eyes would go to the window while I spoke, and he would not come back to the conversation. When I asked once if he was happy, he said yes, with a tone that did not include me. It was like he had a hidden room in his heart where someone else lived. Michael was a name that appeared often in calls. Michael picked up James at the office. Michael brought files to the house sometimes. Michael smiled at me professionally. I told myself again it was nothing, because what else can you do when you love someone? What else can you do when you want the life you promised? The wedding day moved like a river that could not be stopped. People danced. My father gave a speech. James hugged his mother tight and told her softly that he loved her. Everyone looked happy. No one suspected the dark thread that would pull tight later that night. Back in the suitcase, I tried to steady myself. I breathed through the tiny air hole and listened to the two men speak. They were talking about simple things at first, the menu, a file, a request from the office. Then the talk turned small and personal. There were jokes I did not understand. There were names I had never heard. The voice called Michael's name like a song. James's voice was soft and warm. It was a voice you use for someone you hold in your arms. I felt like my body belonged to a different person. I could not let the zipper open. I wanted to keep my secret safe. I wanted the surprise to be mine first. I wanted to control the moment even though everything else was slipping. Then the room had small sounds that pushed my breath out. They laughed in the bed. They touched in ways I had only seen in movies. My hands wanted to hold something. I grabbed the scarf in my lap. I felt small. After some time, the two men left the room. I heard the door softly close. My mind told me to breathe again. I heard James whisper, "I'll be right back." The steps moved down the hall and faded. I crawled a little deeper into the suitcase. I told myself to be calm. I listened to silence like a person listens to the sea. My ears caught a noise, a key turning at the lock. The door opened slowly. Light spilled into the hallway. I thought it might be a hotel staff. The robe sash whispered as someone moved. After a while, I heard two voices in the hall, low and sharp. They were not my husband's voice. They were different tones. The hotel corridor smelled like flowers and cleaning spray. I thought the danger had passed. I took a small breath and felt something cold brush my arm. I froze. The carpet under the bed creaked. The suitcase shivered. The zipper moved. Here is where this part of the story ends, and where the new heavy thing happens. The zipper slid further this time. Metal scraped. Light slipped inside like a thin blade. My eyes stung. I wanted to pull back, but I could not move. I thought of running, of screaming, of 100 tiny escapes. A hand touched the suitcase. A finger pressed the fabric. The sound of breathing grew louder. It was steady. The hand reached for the zipper. I will not tell you what happened when the zipper opened. I will leave that to the next part. But I will tell you this. The world outside the suitcase had different sounds than the world in it. The outside had voices, a laugh that felt warm in the wrong way, footsteps that told secrets. The inside had fear and a small light of stubbornness that said, "You will not take my story easily." And then the hand pulled the zipper. The chapter ends with the metal teeth separating. A little sliver of light cut across my face. The air smelled like perfume and something salty. The hand lingered. The fingers were not gentle. They were testing. My heart thundered like a trapped bird. I could feel the air getting colder. That is where I stop. The suitcase is opening. The hand is there. The room holds a secret that will break me. The words "my love" still ring, a bell inside my chest. What will I do when the zipper reaches the bottom? What will they see? What will happen to the promises we made? Hold on to those questions. The answer is coming, but not yet. The zipper had barely opened when I pushed the suitcase flap with my hands and crawled out. The room felt huge and hot and wrong. My hair was messy. The scarf I had put around my neck was stuck to my shirt. I saw James first. He was sitting on the edge of the bed with his back to me. The light fell on his cheek like a knife. His face was not surprised. It was soft in a way I did not know how to read. Michael stood near the window, and his hand was still on the curtain like he had been holding on to the night. For a second, neither of them moved. The sound in the room was small, a clock ticking and my heart slamming in my ears. I felt the suitcase handle under my knees. I wanted to laugh and cry and run all at once. I tried to make my face look like I had meant the joke. I tried to say, "Surprise," with a happy voice, but the words got stuck in my throat. James turned his head slowly. The look he gave me was not the look of the man who had said his vows. It was not the warm, sunlit look I married. It was a close, careful look. He stared at me the way someone might stare at a stranger who had walked into their house. "Emma," he said softly. Not the bright, loving Emma he used to call across the kitchen, but a thin Emma that made me feel like I had become something small and breakable. I stood up. I felt the suitcase leaning against my legs. My knees trembled. I held the scarf like it was the only thing I owned. I walked toward the bed the way you walk toward a cliff, slow, careful, trying to keep your balance. Michael's eyes met mine. They were kind, the same kind I had seen at the dinner when he handed me the napkins. His smile was quiet. He reached out like he wanted to touch the air between us, but then held his hand back. He did not look away when I stood there, and that hurt more than anything. To be seen and not held. To be known but not chosen. "What is this?" I asked. My voice sounded small in the big room. I tried to sound brave. I tried to find the laugh I had planned, but it did not come. James folded his hands. He said, "You really thought I would just let you surprise me?" He sounded almost bored, like this was a game he had done before and had already won. The words fell into the room cold and smooth. I blinked. "It was a joke," I said. "I wanted to make you laugh." James smiled. It was a half smile. "A joke," he repeated. On our wedding night. He did not step closer. He did not take my hand. Instead, he looked at Michael like he was checking something in a mirror. Michael's face stayed soft. He was not angry or surprised. He seemed to fit into the look James had. For a moment I thought maybe I had made a mistake. Maybe this was one of those silly films where everything turns out fine. James would laugh and hug me, and everything would go back to normal. I held my breath like you hold a note in a song, waiting for the happy ending that would not come. Then James said, "Michael, leave us for a minute." Michael looked at James as if he had been told to do something normal. He moved like he had been asked to step aside 1,000 times. He walked to the door and paused. Michael's eyes caught mine, and he gave the smallest lift of his chin a tiny, private hello. There was something in that look that made my stomach drop. It meant there was more than I had known. It meant the story I believed in had another story hiding inside it. Michael left. The door closed with a soft click that sounded like a small blow. I turned to James. His face was steady. The soft light from the lamp made shadows under his eyes. "Why?" I asked. The single word carried every small worry I had tried to hide since the first time I saw him smile at his phone. James did not answer right away. He sat back on the bed and touched the ribbon on the pillow as if he was smoothing away a crease. He looked tired. He looked far away. After a beat he said, "I thought you should know who I am." Those words were useless to me. They did not explain why he had called Michael my love or why they had kissed. They only built a wall between us that I could not climb. I wanted to shout. I wanted to ask 1,000 things. I wanted to pull his face close and say, "You promised." I wanted to tell him that my whole life was built on those promises. Instead, I found myself asking a different question. "Who is he to you?" James's jaw moved. He said, "Michael is my driver. He's been with me a long time. We help each other. You don't need to make this bigger than it is." He said the last bit like it was a favor. Like he was doing me a kindness by telling me only a little. I felt my hands go numb. It was like someone had turned the air in the room into glass and I could not move. "You called him my love," I said. The words were not a question. They were a fact. He had said them. I had heard them. I had been inside his suitcase when he said them. James looked down. He did not deny it. He said, "I don't know what you heard." That was a lie that did not try to hide itself. The room had the taste of something bitter, like coffee gone wrong. I wanted to throw the scarf at him and run. I wanted to run out into the hotel hall and shout until my throat was raw. I wanted to make him feel the smallness I felt, to make him know the emptiness that opened in the chest like a new hole. Instead, I did something quieter. I sat. I could not stand. My legs gave out a little, and the bed felt like a raft in a storm. I stayed where I was and watched him watch me. I tried to keep my face calm so I could remember the story of us, the good parts, and hold them like a lifeline. We spoke until the candles burned low and the clock read an hour that felt too late, but our words did not touch what had happened. We circled each other like people in a maze. I asked where his heart was, and he said he had many things in it. He spoke about work and loyalty and the truth that sometimes people love more than one way. At one point I asked Michael's name aloud, and James said it like it was another piece on a chessboard. He said Michael had been with him through hard times. He said Michael knew things I did not, things that tied them together. "We can't always choose the shape of our heart," he said. "Sometimes the heart takes a shape it needs." Those words were meant to be gentle, I think. But they were a knife for me. The man I loved was telling me to accept a new shape for his heart, one that did not fit me the way I had thought. I felt the room tilt. I felt like the floor had slipped from under my feet. After a while, the two of us were quiet. We sat like two boats moored at a dock, close but not touching. My mind tried to collect a map of the night. I tried to remember where I belonged. I thought about calling my mother. I thought about calling my friend Sarah. I thought about the way my father had looked at me at the reception when he made his speech. I had not known then that the night could fall like this. I rose slowly. My legs ached. I packed the suitcase again with shaking hands. I could not explain why I was going to do it, but something in me wanted to put a little order back into the chaos. I folded the scarf and slid it into the case. I looked at the mirror and saw my face, pale and small. I wished I could change how I looked and how I felt with one quick motion. Before I could climb back in or leave, the sound at the door changed. At first it was only a soft knock, like a polite guest. Then there was a heavier, faster knocking. The door handle rattled. A voice we did not know asked through the wood in a hard tone, "Is everything all right in there?" James and I exchanged a look. The sound of that voice snapped the fragile calm. It felt like someone had thrown a rope over our boat. My heart stopped again. James moved toward the door slowly. His face went small and closed. He opened the door a crack and peered out. 2 hotel security men stood in the hallway. Their uniforms were stiff. Their badges caught the light. They had flashlights tucked at their sides. One of them, a tall man with a voice like gravel, said, "We received a report of a disturbance." There was a noise and a guest said they saw someone in the hallway acting strange. My mouth felt dry. My hands shook. James turned back to me and said, "Don't be dramatic. I'll handle this." His voice was flat. He stepped back and shut the door slowly. The knock came again, harder this time. "Sir," the security man said, "we're going to check." "Open up, please." My chest folded in. The room had shrunk around me. I could feel the bed sheets like a net. James looked at me with something in his eyes I could not read, perhaps fear, perhaps calculation. He moved like a man who had a plan he had practiced in his head. Before I could say anything, he opened the door and let the men in himself. They stepped inside like they were part of the furniture, routine and sure. One of them shone a small light around the room and said, "Was there a problem, ma'am?" My voice came out thin. "No," I said, but my legs felt weak. The security guard's flashlight landed on the suitcase on the floor and then on me. For a second I thought he would smile and say everything was fine. Instead, he looked at James. James told them a short story. He said someone had tried to sneak into the room and that he had asked hotel staff to follow up. He said he had found me in the suitcase and that he had handled it himself. His voice was steady. He spoke as if he were telling a simple, plain fact. The security men looked at me. They asked if I needed help. My throat closed. I could feel my cheeks burning. It was like being watched through glass, like being a small animal at the zoo. I wanted to shout, to say his name and tell them what I had heard, but the guards looked to James for the truth. They took their cues from him. One of them asked me calmly, "Are you sure you're all right, ma'am?" The words were meant to be kind, but they felt like an examination. I wanted to tell the truth. I wanted to say that the truth would topple everything in the room. I wanted to tell them that this was not a prank, that I had not meant to be a thief or a problem. I opened my mouth, but the words tangled. My voice shook, and the guards looked at me with concern. James steered the conversation, careful and smooth. He told them he would take care of it. He said, "It's a family matter. We'll sort it out." The security men left with a nod. They closed the door and the heavy knock faded away down the hall. The room exhaled and then went quiet again. I slid down to the floor and sat with my back against the bed. The suitcase was at my feet. I felt like the cliff had not dropped me yet, but it had pulled me to the edge. I had been outed and then hidden again by the man I had married. For a minute we sat in the quiet like 2 strangers who had once shared a house. James looked down at his hands. I watched his fingers move like a person who was holding an invisible object. He did not touch me. He did not apologize. He did something else instead, something small that would become important. He picked up his phone and typed quickly. Then he looked up and said, "Emma, maybe you should go for a walk. Clear your head." His voice was calm. He said it like an invitation, but it felt like an order. I nodded slowly. I picked up the suitcase and stood. The room smelled like perfume and cedar and the leftover sweetness of cake from the reception. I walked to the door and my wedding dress rustled like paper. Then another knock came. This one was louder and harder than the others. It was no polite hotel voice. It was rough and quick, like someone who had decided to break something. The door swung open before James could move. A man in a dark suit stood in the doorway. He held his phone up like he was showing a picture. He said 2 words, very direct and very loud. "This is him." The room froze. The stranger's eyes were fixed on James. The suitcase felt heavier at my feet. The man in the suit had the look of someone who did not come to a house for tea. He had the look of a man who had come because something big had already happened and he wanted answers. That was the sound that closed the chapter, the sound of new trouble walking into the room with heavy shoes. The man in the dark suit stood in the doorway like he owned the air in the room. His chest rose and fell fast, like he had run up the stairs. His eyes went straight to James, not to me, not to the room, not to the suitcase. Only to James. And the way he stared at him, it wasn't casual. It wasn't polite. It was the look people have when they hold a truth that can burn a whole house down. "This is him," the man repeated, louder this time. James's back straightened. His face drained of color. My heart jumped into my throat. I stepped back without thinking, bumping into the bed hard enough that I felt the wood shake. The suitcase handle slipped from my fingers. James swallowed. "Sir, you need to calm down," he said, raising his hands slightly as if trying to quiet a dog ready to attack. But the man didn't calm down. He stepped further into the room, closing the door behind him with one hard push. The lock clicked. That small clicking sound felt like a bomb timer starting. I suddenly felt trapped. The room grew tight around me, like the walls were moving closer. "Where is he?" the man demanded. James blinked. "Where is who?" "You know exactly who," the man said. "My brother. Michael." My stomach hit the floor. The man in the suit took another step forward. His jaw was tight, and his hands were balled into fists so hard the veins showed. His shirt collar was open like he had yanked at it on the way up. I felt my breath shake. Brother. Michael had a brother. And that brother looked like he had come to tear the world open. The man pointed to James again. "You sent him a message. You told him to come up here. You said you needed to talk. You told him to hurry." James looked confused for a second, then terrified. My mind raced. Hurry? The last thing James did before the loud knock, he sent a text. I had seen the way his thumbs moved. I hadn't known who he was texting. Now I understood. He hadn't texted me. He hadn't texted hotel staff. He had texted Michael. And Michael didn't come. His brother came instead. That meant something was wrong. Something big. James took a small step back. "Listen, you're misunderstanding." The man cut him off. "He's not answering his phone. He's not in the lobby. He's not in the hallway. He's not in the parking lot. So I'm going to ask again, and you're going to answer me without lying." The man's voice dropped. Cold. Dangerous. Controlled. "Where is my brother?" I felt the heat leave my body. My chest tightened. James opened his mouth, but no words came out. He glanced at the bathroom door. It was tiny, maybe a second, but I caught it. So did the brother. He turned sharply toward the bathroom. His hand went to the handle. He twisted it. Locked. He hit the door with his fist. Hard. Michael. Michael, open the door." No answer. He grabbed the handle again and rattled it. The wood shook. A picture frame on the wall trembled. I took a step forward. Maybe he's not in there," I stammered. The man turned to me, eyes blazing. "You're Emma, right?" I froze. "Yes." "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. "But I need to find my brother." Hurt James? Maybe. Maybe even likely. But not me. That didn't calm my shaking. It only made me feel like the room was full of invisible traps I didn't understand yet. James raised his voice. "Nobody is in the bathroom. You need to leave, or I'll." The man lunged at him so fast I screamed. He grabbed James by the front of his shirt and slammed him against the wall. The bed rattled. A lamp fell and shattered on the carpet. James gasped, choking on air. "Where is he?" the man roared. James coughed. I don't know. You're lying." "I'm not." The brother slammed him again. James groaned in pain. I stepped forward without thinking. "Stop. Please. Stop hurting him." The man didn't look at me. He pressed his forearm against James's chest, pinning him in place. He messaged Michael. He told him to come. I saw the text myself. And now Michael is nowhere. You did something. I didn't. James shouted. I didn't do anything to him. It was a lie. I didn't know how I knew. I just knew. The man released James suddenly. James slid down the wall and landed on the carpet, chest heaving, hands shaking. The man turned toward the room, scanning. His eyes passed over the bed, the wardrobe, the broken lamp, the open suitcase, the window, and then the bathroom door again. Then he noticed something. A shoe. A brown leather men's shoe sticking slightly out from under the curtains near the glass balcony door. My breath caught. The brother's eyes widened, and he moved toward it slowly, like an animal stalking prey. He reached down, grabbed the shoe, and pulled. The shoe came free empty. He looked up sharply. Where is he? He snapped. James stayed silent. And that silence told the brother everything. He lunged again, but this time, not at James. He ran to the curtains and yanked them open completely. The balcony door wasn't locked. It wasn't even closed all the way. Cold night air rushed into the room, blowing the curtains like ghosts. My heart dropped to my stomach. The brother stepped out onto the balcony. The drop from our floor was long. Very long. We were 12 stories high. Michael, he shouted into the dark. No answer. Only the wind. Terror wrapped itself around my neck. Had Michael fallen? Jumped? Been pushed? My mind flashed with images I didn't want to see the moments before, the soft voices, the kiss, the way they spoke to each other. The tracks of their steps on the carpet. The way the balcony curtain had swayed earlier when I first climbed out of the suitcase. Had Michael been out there already? Had he been hiding? Had he overheard everything? Or had James forced him outside? Before the brothers stepped fully outside, before the panic could swallow the night, before any of us could understand what had happened, the door suddenly flew open again. Another person rushed into the room. But this time, it wasn't security. It wasn't staff. It was a woman. Tall. Slim. Black coat. Black boots. Hair tied tight. Eyes sharp like broken glass. She pointed at James and said, "Don't move." Her voice could cut stone. The brothers spun around. "Who the hell are you?" She ignored him. She spoke only to James. "We need to talk. Now." James's face broke completely. No, not tonight." "Yes," the woman said, stepping closer. "Tonight." The brother stepped in front of her. "Lady, this is not your business." She held up a badge so fast he didn't have time to blink. "I think it is." The brother froze. My heart almost stopped beating. A detective. A detective. On my wedding night. I tasted fear at the back of my tongue. It was sharp like blood. "What do you want?" James whispered. The detective stared right into his eyes and said one single sentence that cracked the room open like thunder. "Michael isn't missing." We all froze. James's hands shook. The brother's eyebrows knitted. "What do you mean isn't missing?" The detective breathed out slowly. Then she said, "He's downstairs." My knees nearly buckled. Relief rushed through my chest so fast it hurt. Michael was alive. Alive. I looked at James, hoping foolishly, that he would look relieved too. He didn't. He looked terrified. "Where downstairs?" the brother demanded. The detective pulled off her gloves. Her face softened only slightly. "He's in the hotel kitchen," she said. Shaken. Crying. "And he told me everything. Everything." My skin prickled. Everything meant the kiss. Everything meant the phone calls. Everything meant the relationship James hid. Everything meant the lies spoken over and over. But I could tell there was more. The detective wouldn't be here, unannounced, on my wedding night, with a badge and a hard voice for a cheating husband. No, there was more. "So I want you to answer me honestly," the detective said, stepping closer to James. "Before I ask you the next set of questions." James's breath hitched. "What questions?" She looked him dead in the face. "The questions about what happened on the balcony." The brother gasped. My hands shot to my mouth. James stumbled backward. "What balcony?" I whispered. The detective turned slowly toward me. Her eyes were full of something I couldn't read. Not anger. Not softness. Not pity. Just truth. A terrible, heavy truth. Emma, she said gently, there are footprints on the ledge outside your room. Fresh ones. And there are scuff marks on the railing. My heart stopped. She finished with a single sentence that crushed the entire room. Someone almost went over. The room spun. The truth was spreading like fire. James was sweating, shaking, looking everywhere except at us. The detective watched him closely. The brother looked like he was ready to break down the whole hotel if he didn't get answers. And then, at the exact moment the tension reached its peak, we heard movement from the hallway. Running. Fast. Hard. A voice shouting. Then the door burst open for the third time that night. And standing there was Michael. Alive. Breathless. Tears on his face. Hair messy. Chest rising and falling like he had sprinted up all 12 floors. He pointed at James with a shaking hand. And he screamed one sentence that stopped all of us cold. Tell them what you did. Michael's scream echoed through the room so loudly it felt like the walls themselves shook. Tell them what you did. He stood in the doorway like someone who had just escaped a nightmare. His shirt was wrinkled, his tie was gone, and his eyes were red, not from anger, but from something deeper. Something you see in people who have swallowed fear for too long. The detective stepped forward. Michael, she said gently, slow down. You're safe here. But he wasn't looking at her. He wasn't looking at his brother. He was looking only at James. James, who looked like he was about to collapse. Michael took one shaky step into the room, then another. His hands were trembling so much he had to hold onto the doorframe to steady himself. His brother rushed to him first. I was looking everywhere for you, he cried, grabbing Michael's shoulders. What happened? Did someone hurt you? Michael shook his head and pushed him off, his voice cracking. I need to say it. I need to say it before he lies again. My breath stopped. Again. That word cut through the room like a blade. The detective nodded once. Go ahead. Michael's eyes filled with fresh tears. His bottom lip trembled. He wiped his face with the back of his hand. Then, with a voice that broke on the edges, he looked at me, directly at me, and said, Emma, I didn't want you to find out like this. The room tilted. Find out what? What else was there to know? Who else was he besides the man who kissed my husband behind closed doors? My throat tightened. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. I could only stare. Michael turned back to James. She deserves the truth. I'm done protecting you. James flinched like the words hit him in the face. Michael, stop, he whispered. Please. Not like this. Michael's voice rose. Not like this? You almost pushed me off a 12-story balcony. The room exploded. The detective's eyes widened. The brother gasped. I felt my heart slam against my ribcage so hard it hurt. James staggered backward as if someone had punched him. That's not what happened, he shouted. Michael's chest shook. Yes, it is. The detective stepped forward fast. Tell me everything, Michael. From the beginning. He nodded. His voice was small. Okay. He took a breath that sounded painful. I came up here because James texted me, he said. He said he needed to talk. He said it was urgent. I thought maybe he was finally going to end things with me the right way. I knew he was married now. I knew it was wrong to stay attached. I was ready to let him go. He wiped his face again. But when I got here, he wasn't alone. I heard voices, so I stepped onto the balcony to wait. I didn't want to ruin anything. I didn't want to disrespect his wife. I thought maybe he was talking to staff. Then his eyes flicked to me, filled with shame. I didn't know you were in a suitcase. My chest collapsed inward. Breathing hurt. Michael swallowed. While I waited, I heard him call my name. But not like usual. His voice sounded angry. He said I needed to stop being clingy. That I was going to ruin his marriage if I didn't calm down. He shook his head violently. But I wasn't clingy. I was scared. I thought I was losing him. I thought he wanted me to come up to talk. The brother whispered, oh my God. Michael continued, voice shaking. I stepped inside, ready to talk. Ready to tell him I understood. But he snapped. He said I shouldn't have come. He said he only texted me because he wanted to make sure I wasn't going to follow him around after the ceremony. His face twisted. I told him I wasn't following him. I told him we agreed we would talk after the wedding. And then he started yelling. He said I was ruining everything. He said I had already ruined enough. My stomach twisted. I knew what he meant. He meant me. I had ruined something just by being his wife. Michael inhaled shakily. He grabbed my arm. Hard. And when I pulled away, he dragged me toward the balcony. I begged him to let go. I told him I wasn't trying to cause problems. I told him I just loved him. His voice cracked again. And then he shoved me back so close that my foot slipped. My heel went over the ledge. I almost fell. I grabbed the railing. I screamed. His brother covered his mouth, tears in his eyes. Michael looked at the detective. I swear I didn't jump. I didn't threaten to. I didn't lean over. He pushed me. I almost died. My knees went weak. I searched James's face, begging silently for the truth. But James didn't deny it. He didn't argue. He didn't defend himself. He just lowered his head into his hands. That was worse than any confession. Michael continued quietly. He laughed. He said people like me always come crawling back. He said if he wanted, he could make my whole life disappear. The detective lifted her pen slowly. James Hale, is that true? James whispered, barely audible. He's exaggerating. Michael snapped, you know you did it. The detective held up a hand. Both of you calm down. But Michael wasn't calming down. He was breaking down. Then he turned to me again, slowly, gently, painfully. Emma, he whispered, voice cracking. He didn't marry you because he loved you. My heart tore a little. He married you because he needed the image. He needed the life. The stability. The family presentation. The safe path. His brother clenched his fists. Michael's tears spilled freely now. He told me you would make things easier. For his career. For his image. For the promotions he wanted. My vision blurred. Michael stepped closer, desperation trembling in every muscle. He didn't marry you to love you. He married you to hide. The room felt like it was sinking. The detective whispered, Emma, are you okay? I nodded even though I wasn't. My whole world felt like it had cracked into two uneven pieces, one full of truth, one full of lies. Then Michael whispered something that made the air stop moving. He used both of us. Silence. Thick. Heavy. Suffocating. Finally, the detective spoke softly. Michael, why did you come upstairs again? After the balcony. He looked down. I ran. I panicked. I went to the kitchen to hide. A staff member found me and called security. That's when I saw the detective downstairs. I told her everything. I couldn't let him spin another lie. The detective nodded. He told me enough that I had to come up immediately. James suddenly stood up. His voice came out shaky, angry, scared. You're twisting everything. I didn't push him. He slipped. He panicked. You're acting like I'm some monster. Michael turned on him, voice exploding. You pushed me because you didn't want me to tell her the truth. James's face went red. You're lying. The detective stepped between them. Enough. Both of you sit. Michael sat. His brother sat beside him, holding his arm protectively. James did not sit. He stood trembling near the bed, his wedding suit wrinkled, his eyes wild. The detective sighed. Emma, I know this is a lot. But I need you to listen carefully now. I nodded, numb. She continued. In the kitchen, when Michael told me what happened, another staff member came forward. Michael's head snapped up. What? Who? The detective looked at each of us, her voice calm but stern. They have footage. James froze. Footage of the hallway. Footage of the balcony door opening and closing. Footage of Michael stumbling back inside. And footage of you following him, James. James's lips parted. No, that's not possible. The detective's voice sharpened. James, they have everything. His knees buckled. He sat on the edge of the bed like a man waiting for a verdict. Michael covered his face and cried quietly. His brother hugged him tightly. The detective folded her arms, watching all of us with steady eyes. Then she spoke again, slowly, carefully, placing her words like bricks. This is no longer just a relationship issue. What happened tonight could be considered attempted harm. My stomach dropped. James's hands shook visibly. But, she added, before I take anyone in for questioning, I want to give all parties a chance to breathe. James looked up desperately. Please. She held up a hand. Emma, she said, turning to me gently. You will decide what happens next. I will not proceed until I speak with you privately. My heart hammered. Me? Me? I wasn't ready. I wasn't strong enough. I didn't know how to choose anything right now. But there was no time. No room. No escape. And then, before I could gather a single thought, before anyone could move, before the detective could guide me out or James could speak again, a loud crash came from the hallway. Something hit the wall. People started yelling. Footsteps pounded toward our door. The detective whipped around, hand on her badge. Michael's brother stood up fast. I grabbed the bedpost to keep from falling. And then, the hallway lights flickered. Shadows moved. And someone screamed. Fire! Fire on the 4th floor. Everyone out. Smoke drifted under our doorway. James leapt to his feet. The detective yelled, move. Now! The building alarm began to wail. Our room filled with panic. And in that chaos, with all of us scrambling toward the door, hearts running like engines, James did something no one expected. He grabbed my wrist. Hard. And pulled me away from the door. His eyes were wild. Emma, he whispered urgently, you are not leaving this room until you hear my side. The fire alarm screamed through the hallway like a crying machine. Red lights spun on the ceiling. Smoke slid under the door in crooked, hungry fingers. The whole floor sounded alive, doors slamming, people shouting, feet running, the deep metal growl of the hotel's emergency system roaring to life. But none of that mattered. Not the noise. Not the danger. Not the fire. Because James was holding my wrist so tight I felt his nails. Emma, he hissed, dragging me backward, away from the open door where everyone else was trying to escape. You're not leaving until you hear me. I stumbled, hitting my hip on the bed frame. James, let go. No. His voice cracked, louder than the alarms. Not until you hear my side. The detective turned fast. James Hale, release her now. Michael and his brother shouted at the same time. The detective's hand shot toward her radio, but the siren was too loud for her words to carry. James's grip tightened. Smoke thickened. And in that split second, I saw something in him I had never seen before. Not anger, not guilt, not panic. Fear. Real fear. Like he was the one trapped in a burning room. Emma, he whispered, voice breaking, please. You have to let me explain before they take me away. I froze. Not because I wanted to stay. Not because I believed him. But because I realized he already believed he was losing everything and losing me. And a man who feels cornered becomes unpredictable. James, I said carefully, keeping my voice calm, talk. But let go of my wrist. His hand loosened a little. Not enough to free me, but enough to show he was listening. The detective stayed where she was, eyes sharp, assessing distance and timing. Michael's brother positioned himself between James and the door, blocking escape. Michael stood behind me, shaking, hands clenched. James swallowed hard. I didn't try to kill him. Smoke swirled around us, and I felt the heat from the hallway. We didn't have long. James continued, voice shaky but fast, like he was running out of breath. He was panicking. That's all. He was yelling that he loved me, that he couldn't let me get married. He said he'd expose everything. I told him to calm down. I tried to pull him inside. Michael stared at him in disbelief. You grabbed me, Michael said quietly. You grabbed my arms so hard I bruised. James shook his head. I was helping you. You shoved me backward. You stumbled. You pushed me. The words crashed into each other like waves. The detective stepped forward. James, I saw the camera footage. Michael tripped, yes, but only because your arm jerked forward. He froze. I didn't, he started. She raised a hand. Stop. This isn't the place. We need to evacuate. Now. The fire alarm wailed harder. Smoke was getting thicker. And suddenly Michael's brother shouted, the fire is spreading. We need to move now. He grabbed Michael's sleeve. The detective reached for me. Emma, come with. James yanked me backward again. Listen to me, He screamed, voice cracking. Emma, everything I did was for you. My heart stopped cold. For me? I whispered. He nodded desperately. I was going to end things with him after the honeymoon. I swear. I needed time. I didn't want to embarrass you. I didn't want to ruin the wedding day. I was trying to protect you. His words didn't make sense. They crashed into walls inside my head. Protect me? By lying to me? By kissing someone behind my back? By using me as a shield for his career? By nearly killing someone? He kept talking. Emma, please. You think I don't care about you? I do. I love you. I chose you. I wanted to build a family with you. I just needed time to clean everything up. His voice trembled. To fade him out. Michael's face crumpled. His brother grabbed him, holding him up like his legs might fail. The detective shook her head. James, that's not love. That's manipulation. James glared at her. Stay out of this. Smoke flooded the room in another wave. Coughing, choking, rising heat. We were out of time. I looked at James, really looked. At the man I married. The man who promised me honesty. The man who smiled at me in sunlight and held my hand like I was the only woman in the world. But that man was gone now. Standing before me was someone else, someone who didn't understand what love was, someone who didn't care who he hurt as long as he kept his perfect life. My voice came out soft but steady. James, I said, I don't love you anymore. It was the truth. The pure, painful truth. The kind that doesn't shout, it simply lands. His face went blank. Then cracked. Then collapsed. No, he whispered. No. No, you don't get to say that. Not now. Not after everything. I'm done, I said. We're done. The detective stepped in. Let her go, James. He tightened his grip. No. I can fix this. Emma, we can fix this. Don't leave me. Please. But his voice was shaking too much. Tears ran down his face. The fire alarm drowned his words. Then, boom, a loud explosion shook the hallway. The fire had reached something electrical. We all screamed. The detective lunged forward. Out! Now! James jerked, startled by the explosion. His grip loosened. That was all I needed. I pulled my wrist free and ran to the door. James reached out after me, hands shaking. Emma. But Michael's brother stepped between us, blocking him. Stay away from her. The detective grabbed my arm and pulled me into the smoke-filled hallway. Move, she shouted. Michael ran beside me. His brother followed. Behind us, James hesitated, then ran too, coughing hard. Smoke made the hallway a gray maze, but emergency lights blinked red and white, guiding us toward the stairwell. People flooded out of rooms, crying, shouting, stumbling. The heat grew stronger. I grabbed the railing as we ran down the stairs. Michael tripped once and his brother caught him. The detective kept shouting for people to stay low. We reached the 4th floor, the one on fire. Flames licked the wall through an open doorway. Smoke poured out like a monster's breath. Keep moving, the detective yelled. We covered our faces and pushed downward. By the time we reached the lobby, firemen were already rushing in. The cold air hit my lungs like ice when we made it outside. I fell to my knees on the sidewalk. My wrist was red where James had held me. My heart felt like it was breaking in slow motion. Michael collapsed too, sobbing. His brother held him. The detective spoke into her radio, giving details. Firefighters ran past us. Police cars screeched to a stop. And then, James stumbled out of the hotel, coughing violently, eyes red, suit covered in ash. He looked at me across the crowd. Just looked. And for the first time that night, there was no anger in his face. No ego. No excuses. Only the look of a man who realized he lost everything. He took one step toward me. But police officers stopped him. James Hale, one said. He nodded weakly. You need to come with us. He didn't fight. He didn't argue. He didn't look away. He just let them handcuff him and guide him toward the police car. Before he ducked inside, he turned his head and whispered, so softly I barely heard him. I'm sorry. He meant it. But some sorries come too late. The door closed. The car drove away. And just like that, the man I married on the same night was gone from my life forever. Later, when the fire was under control and the hotel crowd had thinned, the detective sat with me on the curb. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. "No," I whispered. "But I will be." She nodded. "That's enough for now." Michael approached me slowly, eyes swollen from crying. "I'm sorry," he said. "All of this happened because of me." I shook my head. "No. It happened because James lied to all of us." Michael's brother held him close. They started to walk away, but Michael turned back once. "Emma, I hope you find someone who loves you the way you deserve." I smiled, small but real. "I hope you do too." He nodded, then left. The detective drove me to my mother's house. I didn't cry until I stepped inside the quiet living room. I cried for the wedding dress that still smelled like flowers, for the vows that were built on broken ground, for the suitcase I hidden like a child hoping for laughter, for Michael, who loved the wrong person, for James, who never learned what love really was. But I also cried for myself, for the woman who walked into a hotel room with trust and walked out with truth, for the woman who would rebuild her life from honest pieces instead of beautiful lies. In the months that followed, the marriage was annulled. James accepted a plea deal. Michael got therapy and time. His brother stayed by his side. The detective checked on me once. My mother hugged me often. I healed slowly, honestly, quietly. And then one morning in spring, months later, I woke up and realized something surprising. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't broken. I wasn't afraid. I was free. Truly free. Not because James was gone, but because I had finally chosen myself. And that was the real revenge.